Statist Tim Pool goes to bat for statist and liar and noted plagiarist Benny Johnson, who, for all we know, made up the story about him being threatened by some guy that the DOJ is now going after. But I want to highlight something that Tim Pool says here, because he says, quote, "The guy who killed Charlie Kirk allegedly shared political ideology with AOC." So Tim Pool is right here towing the government official storyline about who killed Charlie Kirk. And then in true left versus right propagandist fashion says the left has always been the violent ones. Listen to this.
NBC News. DOJ charges man with sending threatening letter to pro-Trump influencer Benny Johnson. Pam Bondi announced the charges at a news conference in which Johnson argued that violence had been mainstreamed by the Democrat Party, said, and he's correct. I have been in contact with the FBI over the past couple of weeks directly because of the threats we have received, and they are serious. And I also want to point out, Benny Johnson made a point about this. NBC News had to really scrape the bottom of the barrel to find a picture of him looking menacing, because he's always just smiling in all of his photos and videos. He makes a point of that, I think intentionally for this reason. But then, of course, they found a picture of Benny looking menacing. Here's the point.
Before you make that point, Tim, did I mention that Tim Pool is promoting and protecting the administration that right now is involved in a cover-up for one of the largest pedo rings in American history? Oh, did I also mention that Benny Johnson is doing the same thing? These two propagandists are actually actively involved in continuing to promote an administration that is actively covering up all the information and the clients involved in one of the largest scale human trafficking / pedo rings. But go ahead, Tim.
I sit here in this, I don't know, warehouse building, I guess you can call studio building. It's a big building. And we built it and we moved away from the city because of the violence, the threat of violence, and the threat of conflict that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. You know, look, I had a guy try to break into my house at New Jersey, told me I couldn't defend myself, went to Maryland. We've had 15 swattings. We had a guy show up in the past year, I think it was about 1 year ago now, wearing a dress, physically attacking one of the residents because we don't live there and work there anymore. And so a guy showed up, went on the property, caused problems. When one of the residents came out to say, get off the property, he got attacked. It's nuts. A guy wearing a dress and filming. It's insane. And we don't even live there. I own properties, man. It's crazy.
Of course, because you're a millionaire, just like Benny Johnson is a millionaire, but you're a millionaire propagandist. If you were telling the truth, that would be one thing. If you were consistently telling the truth and not taking a left versus right propaganda side. But listen to what he says here.
Crazy. The left doesn't deal with this. Hassan Piker is worried about threats, but he lives in an urban environment, in a residential house, in a residential neighborhood. The left does not have anywhere near the fear. Why? Because the left have always been the violent ones.
The left have always been the violent ones. Nothing like painting with a broad brush, Tim? Let me remind you also what Tim said in 2019, and then we'll get back to this. This is him from April 17th, 2019. He says, I don't stop being left because these people hate free speech, free press, etc. I don't stop being left because I defend culture mixing and interracial relationships. There is no new left. There is a left being torn apart. But now Tim Pool just broad brushes all leftists as violent when we know that leftists and rightists both call for violence, because that's what politics is. Politics is a call for violence. You want your supreme leader to rule everybody else and rob them while he's at it. And the left wants the exact same thing. So the left wants violence. The right wants violence. And here's hypocrite Tim calling the left the violent ones. They've always been the violent ones. But he's not done.
You know, I hear this a lot when they say, but the right is responsible for more violence. You're not going to get me to defend crackpot white supremacists. They're not a part of my political movements.
So there are no crackpot leftists who veer off the other leftists and actually commit violent acts. But when the criticism comes toward you, you're going to say, you're not going to get me to defend crackpot extreme rightists. Well, what if there are crackpot extreme leftists and then the other leftists aren't near as violent as you people that are on the right claim that you're not violent? What if all this broad brushing is counterproductive? What if it plays into the left versus right paradigm lie? What if it keeps us all distracted, demoralized, dehumanized, and conquered? What if Tim is just fomenting and greasing the wheels of the propaganda machine that continues through the script writing of the social engineers and the psychological operators to continue to keep us under the thumb of the federal government, whether it's run by Democrats or Republicans? What if he's actually fanning the flames of evil by the federal government? And that's what it looks like he's doing. But he's not done, because he still has to promote the government's official story with regard to what happened to Charlie Kirk and the storyline that Tyler Robinson is the guy who is the trigger man.
Or party. It's a nonsense statement. They're right. They're not with us. So screw them. But the guy who killed Charlie Kirk, allegedly, shared political ideology with AOC, is motivated by the same exact ideology as the mainstream Democrat Party. When some crackpot white supremacist goes out, that is at odds with the mainstream Republican Party. You get the point.
Yeah, the point is, you look like you're a shill. The point is, you look like you're a paid propagandist. Just like Benny Johnson, here's his rap sheet. In September of 2024, federal prosecutors revealed a Russian influence operation that paid a media company, Tenant Media, to produce content. This includes Benny Johnson. This is Lauren Chen and Tim Pool and some others. Several influencers, including Benny Johnson, and others were not charged but were identified as unknowing participants in the scheme. BuzzFeed fired Johnson after an internal review found over 40 instances of plagiarism, misleading stories. That's why I don't believe his current claim that somebody threatened him and his family's life. At a later job with the Independent Journal Review in 2015, Johnson was accused of assigning a story that falsely implied President Barack Obama had influenced a federal judge's ruling. And there's false claims about property damage in 2025. A New York Times investigation found that Johnson made false public claims about his house being burned down and murders occurring on his street. Security footage and police reports viewed by the Times did not corroborate his account. He made false public claims about his house being burned down? If that's true, then how can we trust anything that comes out of the mouth of Benny Johnson? The bottom line is both Tim Pool and Benny Johnson and others like them continue to lay cover for the administration that is covering up for one of the largest pedophile rings in American history. Why does anybody continue to follow them? Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, the links are in the description. I will see you in the next video.